Good afternoon. Welcome to the British Boxing Blog podcast again. Episode 50, I believe. 50th official sort of Sunday weekly review type of podcast. We've probably done more than that all in, but we'll take that. Half a century.
Half century, aye. We've made it.
Yeah, you good? You all right?
Aye, not too bad. Just sat through an absolute dire match there. But
I know.
I'll
end up dedicating half an hour to bloody Newcastle United. I've got a lot.
Good job we're not a football podcast because we're here all day.
I know.
Anyway, while we're talking about football, there's an absolute cracking amount of boxing to be getting on with from last night.
Aye, there is. And today, really, a big announcement today as well. Probably not the best news, but aye.
Of course. So, for those that haven't heard, boxing is now on the back burner again in the UK. The British Board of Control, Robert Smith's come out and announced that there'll be no sanctioned tournaments. Now, that basically means any sanctioned boxing bouts or shows or promotions this month, January 2021, which seems bizarre that we're already in January and then it's been put back, and it's like, well, okay, so 3 weeks, whatever, it's not that big a deal. But already there's a couple of good shows that we talked about last time. We talked about 2 European title fights coming up on different shows. Lee McGregor in the MTK show and see Josh Kelly against David Avanesian. It's
cursed, isn't it?
That fight, it's unbelievable. I saw someone on Twitter basically linking it to like UFC and Khabib and Tony Ferguson, which is the same sort of story. Like a fight that loads of fans want to see, and for one reason or another, it's been rescheduled about 4 or 5 times. Still hasn't happened, and it seems like Avanesian and Kelly just seems to be headed the same way, unfortunately.
Aye, it's a blow. It really is. That fight is just cursed, man. That's just the boxing gods do not want that fight to happen. It's a shame. It is a shame because just getting into it again last night, and after basically a 2-week gap since Canelo Smith, and I thought, I was sitting there last night thinking, God, there's nothing until the MTK show, but then there's nothing even. We're looking February now for the next meaningful boxing action in this country. So, so that's a month written off, really. Do you know what I mean? That's a month gone out of the calendar already, a boxing calendar. So a bit of a blow. I guess you can sort of understand the reasons. There's so much going on at the minute. I can't keep up with all the COVID announcements and numbers and cases.
Every time we obviously discuss it with regards to boxing, we sort of highlight this. You've got to look at the wider picture as well. And people in everyday life suffering a bit more than sports fans, just not getting to see one of the favourite boxers perform and stuff like that. But then on the sort of the other side of that, you look at it from the boxer's point of view and how many have dedicated months of their lives, especially this time of year, over Christmas, over New Year, stuck to the guns, stuck in the gym, stuck at it, and then the cost of their own, through no fault of their own, are now going to be out of pocket. They're going to be in limbo again as to when they're going to be fighting again. I know Eddie Hearn came out and said with regards to the Matchroom show, they'll be looking to put it on as soon as possible, whether that's in the UK or abroad. Potential Matchroom USA route for it. If there's not going to be an audience there, then it doesn't necessarily matter where it takes place. You just want like these boxers further down the card to get the opportunities and get the paydays, because essentially they need it to survive and to get by.
I know. It's mad. I've seen Eddie Hearn put a tweet out today saying that basically they're going to plough on regardless in February. I don't know what he really meant. It sounded a bit frustration. Again, someone replied saying, why don't you take it to another country? He said, if that's the last resort, then we will do that, but we don't want to. But I don't know. Watch this space, but a bit of a blow for boxing fans in January. But life goes on, and hopefully things will start getting better. But who knows?
From the lows of that to the highs of last night, the high, if you are King Ryan Garcia.
Aye, mad.
I'll let you gush over him based on your tweets and that from last night.
It wasn't gushing. I get it was gushing, but I get that, right? He's not everyone's cup of tea, and by national psyche, we don't really deal well with arrogant, brash, over cocky, overconfident, good-looking fuckers. Basically, you know what I mean? Like as Brits, we like a humble, plucky, underdog, working class man. At least our mates do. You know what I mean? Like we. Give us Ricky Hatton over Lewis Hamilton any day of the week. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just what we do, and I can totally see why Garcia rubs people up the wrong way. Like He's as I said, he's good looking, he's brash, he's arrogant, he's cocky, he's got 800 million Instagram followers or whatever. Like, yeah, he's not everyone's cup of tea, and he was going up against plucky, humble, down to earth Luke Campbell, salt of the earth, man of the people, GB boxer, Olympian. Oh my God, step too far for Garcia, and then it was actually. It really wasn't a step too far for Garcia. It was like he dealt with it pretty well. Or like he got put on his arse, but after that, there was, I don't know. It's just as if we can't. There was giving it with one hand and taking it away. Last night, I thought from a lot of boxing Twitter, I was like, oh well, he's beat Luke Campbell, but he'll never beat Tank or he'll never beat Lopez, and it's like we couldn't just accept that. Actually, that kid had got off the floor from the second round, put down the first time of his life, a young lad, and then composed himself, showed a bit of grit, came through it, and then stopped bloody decent fighter in Luke Campbell with a cracking body shot. Like, there was that reluctance, I think, to be like, that was pretty decent. Whether he probably will get beat by other fighters, and like I said, there's definite flaws there in him. He didn't see the Luke Campbell shot coming. He leaves his head in the air. He's easy to hit. But aside from all that, he's just probably beat a top 5, top 8 lightweight. Do you know what I mean? He's just stopped and took everything out of a really good fighter, Luke Campbell. So I think there has to be a bit of praise for him last night. And maybe he's not the best, but he's up there. He's top 5 on that show last night. He's one of the best lightweights about. And I thought, if we can't praise him for that, then when can we praise him? Do you know what I mean?
100%. I think you can definitely praise him, and you mentioned there that it's sort of given with one and taken away with the other. There's a bit of an edge to some of the compliments, as it were, and saying like, yeah, I guess he's good. And boxing has this habit of moving the goalposts very, very quickly. Like, a lot of people, me included, thought it was a 50-50, thought Campbell had a very good chance of going over there and outboxing him, teaching him a bit of a lesson. Maybe it was a bit too soon for him. He was too green. And ultimately, that wasn't the case at all. And depends basically just how soon you want to leave it before you look on. I think when these shows happen, obviously you're in the moment, and then very quickly it moves on to, right, who's next? Like, what's happening? Where do you see him going? Like,
yeah,
we've had this basically the format of a lot of our podcasts, isn't it? You talk a little bit about the fight, about the result, and then you look ahead and you sort of saying, right, well, who's the target? He came out afterwards and he's asked straight away, like, right, well, who are you fighting next? He's now mandatory for Devin Haney. Brilliant little fight there. 2 very similar prospects in the world stage, as it were. They're both up there. Haney has a version of the world title. Garcia is now the challenger for that. They're both young men, both unbeaten. Similar in a lot of ways. So you think, right, yeah, get them in together. That could be a potentially interesting fight, and there's going to be questions asked. And in our preview show, when we're looking ahead to these fights, we always look and you ask yourself questions, and what questions are going to be answered in the fight. And from a Garcia point of view, I think some of them were answered emphatically, like the intangibles, like how's he going to respond when he faces a little bit of adversity? How's he going to take it when things don't go his own way? And he showed like he's got a lot of bottle. And I think when you look at him, like physically, you look at how pretty he is and all the rest of it. Sick of hearing about that in the commentary last night, like how he's
we'll come on to that in a bit.
He's good looking, but he's got a bit of spite about him and that. But it rings true, and I think because of how he looks, because of the Instagram following, the social media craze around him, people overlooked him as much as they claimed he was overlooking Luke Campbell. And he basically showed that, like, despite his looks, obviously there's no correlation directly between them, but because he's this pretty boy and he's flash and he's confident, and you hadn't really seen him challenged. Understand me, there were questions around how he'd respond, and he got caught with a lovely shot, a lovely left hand from Luke Campbell, planted him on the canvas. Like, obviously, he didn't get up particularly hurt. It wasn't a flash knockdown. It was somewhere probably in between a flash knockdown and getting caught absolutely clean with a perfect punch. But he got up and he fought on. He got himself back into it. Like, that was the second round. So Garcia won the first, Campbell won the second. I thought then Campbell won maybe a couple of the next rounds as well. It were a lot closer, a bit more competitive, but ultimately Garcia wore him down and overwhelmed him really with his power and that freshness. But also you had to bite down a bit. You had to show a bit of balls and a bit of guts, and he came through that. And like the finish, I mean, it was absolutely sensational. It was coming. It was not necessarily the body shot, because Garcia had been headhunting quite a lot, and that's potentially brilliant from a tactical point of view that he was doing that, and he was loading up on his shot. You can talk about how flat-footed he was. He was getting caught quite square on at times, but when you've got that power, that it is the ultimate equalizer, isn't it? Like you can afford to sort of be a bit sloppy in other areas because you know you're going to get away with it, or you've got a good chance of getting yourself out of it. It wasn't that sort of Hail Mary shot that he was losing. He was down on all the cards and he caught him with it. I think he was on top in the fight. He was taking over in the fight, and it was just the sort of icing on the cake, the body shot that caught Campbell and ultimately like ended the fight and left him in a bad way, really.
It was interesting that Campbell came out afterwards and said that was like he's never been in with someone hit so hard, and I thought, well, yeah, it was quite a classy, dignified response, and he said he felt it before that, and then he's walking back to get away from him, and that's where his body sort of relaxed and a bit less tensed, and there's something beautiful about those shots, isn't there? You all have your favourite punch in boxing, whether it's like an uppercut like Povetkin or Davis, but then I think equally as like beautiful as just that sort of body liver shot that just kills you, just takes everything out of you, and it really did, and you just couldn't beat the count, Luke. It was just I don't know. I think Mick Conlon put a tweet out last night saying that he's come through an acid test, and I think that's what it was. Not every question was answered. They'll never be answered until he fights even the bigger names now, and I think that's again, it probably just shows now where Luke Campbell is as well. He's that bit below. Do you know what I mean? We were debating that the other day, like, where is Luke Campbell? Is he up there with the best still at 135? And I think the answer now is brilliant. Hailstone against the Conservative. You probably can hear that, but I'll just keep talking. Or raining loudly. But anyway, I just think, he's probably at that gatekeeper level now, Luke Campbell. I was reluctant last night to go on Twitter to say, like, what's next for him, because you don't want to be too disrespectful after he's just got beat, because he's had a fine career, like amateur and pro, really. But for Garcia, like, he's just beat a good fighter. He's beat him quicker than Lomachenko beat him, 18 months ago, whatever. Like, he won well, and is that too loud? Can you hear that?
No, honestly, I can't hear it at all.
Okay, good. Getting put on his backside leaves that element of doubt. Maybe he's a bit of reticence, a bit of sort of criticism comes from, well, he's actually not, maybe he's the real deal that everyone thought he was, because he showed a bit of vulnerability. But for me, I thought it was important to see how he bounced back from that vulnerability, and I couldn't fault the way he bounced back from it. I thought it was a sort of sterling bit of a comeback, and he roused himself well, and just all the pressure was on him sort of going in as well. I think, like, he is the sort of poster boy. Everything is just geared up to him to be massive. And I thought, and I put on Twitter last night, I was like, God, imagine if Luke Campbell could have beat him. That would just totally derail the hype train. And, it didn't, because I thought at one point, God, he could really come apart of the scenes here. And he really didn't. I thought he deserved immense credit for the way he bounced back. Campbell, when I tweeted last night, I was like, he's just using his experience. There's no how he's not rushing in after he put Garcia down. And I think maybe in hindsight, that was possibly his downfall. Like, he was never going to get a better chance, was he, with the benefit of hindsight, than maybe putting it straight on him as soon as, after that. But he didn't, for whatever reason, whether that's because he'd felt the power already by that second round, I don't know, or he was wary of what was coming back. But I think it was a one that got away moment for Campbell there. Like,
yeah, I think Luke and Shane McGuigan definitely will have worked on Garcia countering, especially with his left hook. And it's hard to gauge how hurt he was. Like, it was a lovely shot, clean shot, and it did seem to buzz him. And I think there was one just before it. Luke caught him with the right hand, and you sort of saw Garcia shake his head a little bit and give the smile, which is the sort of telltale sign that it got his attention, and it did actually sting him a bit. And he put him down, and then you think, yeah, like, again, hindsight, as you just said there, like, you pile on. I saw someone on Twitter discussing it with Billy Nelson, and Billy is the boxing trainer, saying, like, I wouldn't have been telling him to rush in. Like, you've got him where you want him. Like, it's the second round. You don't want to pile in and gas. Like, just take your time, and you're going to be confident of catching him with something similar. And I think Campbell's game plan of targeting the body with the jab and the straight left was a nice setup for that right, the left hand over the top. And it was something that even by the second round, even by the end of the first round, you could see he'd been trying to land, and just giving Ryan Garcia something else to think about. He's probably thinking, right, this early in the fight, like, I'm going to get other opportunities. He's not thinking that this is me one chance, I'm going to flatten him now, or I'm going to lose. Think, right, like, I'm boxing well here, I'm on top, like, I can maintain this, I can keep me concentration, I can keep me focus. Ultimately, didn't end up like that at all, did it? But I don't think rushing in, like, especially with Luke Campbell's attributes, would have been the right thing to do. Obviously, if he'd gone in and put it on him and knocked him and, like, stopped him, and the ref jumps in, then yeah, he's won. You can't argue with that. But I think, yeah, that's like a massive dose of after the fact thing. Yeah, because he's been chinned since, like, he should have maybe stepped it up a little bit more. I think tactically there was no reason for him to do that. But yeah, you can argue it's the wrong decision because of what's happening, how the fight's gone. I think with Garcia, like, it depends at which side of it you want to be on. Like, if you go along with the broadcast, he's Pacquiao, he's Mayweather, he's De La Hoya, Sugar Ray Leonard, all rolled into one. He's the future of boxing. That was like his coronation, and he's come through adversity. He's shown he can get stuck in a firefight, he can get dropped, he can come back, he can do everything. But if you're then going to hate on him, you can pick out the flaws without too much difficulty. Like you mentioned, the footwork, being caught flat-footed a little bit. He's been dropped. I think not just his mentality, but physically he responded well to that. Like, he got up and he wasn't particularly on shaky legs. Like, he showed that he can take a fairly clean shot, ultimately knocking him down. But he wasn't like wobbly, and he didn't take a while to physically recover from it. And you can put that down to his conditioning, his stamina, his like physical attributes, as well as the sort of the hand speed, like strength and condition. Ultimately, it comes down to doing it, and he did well. He responded well from that point of view. And I think the truth of the matter with him is it sits somewhere in between. Like, he's not the greatest of all time yet. He's got masses of potential, but it was a 22-year-old. There's still a lot of work to be done in the gym, and if you can go away and do that and correct some of those flaws, or reduce those flaws and minimize the errors and the mistakes, then yeah, he's potentially right in the mix as being one of the best in the world. I mean, he's already, like you say, top 5 in the world right now, depending on where you rank him and how you sort of match him up against the others.
I guess it's all sort of conjecture until they actually fight those big names in that division. Like, Haney fight is probably the easiest. They're probably they both feel like, well, not with like Matchroom, but like they could easily fight on the same network, I'm guessing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think
yeah, in theory, that's the easiest one to make, because like Haney's Matchroom USA, isn't he? Garcia's Golden Boy. They're both working on DAZN. Both boxed on DAZN. Haney was there. He's now the mandatory for the WBC. It makes perfect sense. Like, put those two in. I think from a fan point of view, you want to see Garcia in with at least Haney. And I mean, like, Haney, there's Tank Davis floating around, super feather and lightweight. He's been mentioned. He's up there as like a world champion. Obviously, Teofimo Lopez is the one who's holding all the belts at the minute. So, like, all the belts apart from the WBC regular or whatever they call it. He's franchise champion there. He's just coming off the win of Lomachenko. Like, he, in most people's eyes, is the man at lightweight.
He's the man that beat the man, isn't he? So
you've got, like, I think we talked about this in the preview, didn't we? But we've got like Garcia, Haney, Davis, and Lopez, all these like young American unbeaten boxers. So you put them in some sort of eliminator, like little fatal 4-way, get the winners against each other, and you see who's the man there. Like, they're exciting. And I've seen a lot on social media. A lot of people claim like Lomachenko's lost to Lopez, and now people are ruling him out. I think people are ruling him out because you've got Lopez there, like, who's just beaten him. So you want to see how Lopez does against, like, Lopez is considered the number one in the division. You want to see how he does against the others and how Garcia matches up against him and whether he has to go through Haney or Davis first to get there. Like, that's what you want to see. I think it'll be a massive surprise if any of them fight Lomachenko next, because it offers very little for them. It's an incredibly difficult fight. He's still an elite boxer. He's still absolutely world class. He's got the potential, and I would favour him to beat any of those three, like, not named Lopez. And if they beat him, the credit is minimal because Lopez has already done it. Like, if Garcia goes in and knocks Lomachenko out, then yeah, you're like, okay, wow, he's got something there. But the risk and the reward, like, from a promoter's point of view, is totally different to how the fans want to do it. And De La Hoya's already come out and said, like, he's going to sit down, he's going to think carefully about what the next route is. And if he doesn't fight Haney, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Jorge Linares, someone who's got that bit of name value, but another winnable fight that they can sort of just about get away with and just about justify before he goes in and fights one of these other unbeaten champions, or one of the unbeaten champions, I should say. As Garcia is not actually a world champion yet, despite what DAZN would have you believe.
At the minute, like you say, he's still on that trajectory, isn't he? Being sort of, and like you said, like, you know, now the gamble paid off. Do you know what I mean? The Campbell gamble sort of paid off. We were debating whether they were overlooking him and they were taking on a bit more than they could chew, and obviously they weren't. So he's still best name on his record by a mile, and he's still, everything's just going upwards for him. And you see that post-fight interview with him last night, like, as I keep saying, whether you like him or not, you can just see why he takes so many boxes into becoming, like, he's already a massive star, but could be huge. Like, he could be huge. He takes everything, like, from an American boxing point of view. You know how they like their sports stars over there. Do you know what I mean? It's different to how we like ours, I'm guessing. He's just massive. Like, he talks well, he looks good, he fights well, he's got the social media appeal. He's came out on a friggin' chariot thing with a GoPro at the front for his YouTube videos, and it's the way of the world, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
yeah, we've talked about this before, haven't we? Sort of from a domestic small hall UK scene, but there are differences, and we'll alluded to some of those, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Brit abroad in terms of a boxing sense. But if you were to make a boxer from scratch, and you look at it in sort of two parts, don't you? The technical side of things, what they can do in the ring, and obviously then outside the ring. So if you look at what you can do inside the ring, and if you can't then, like, just sort of say, oh, well, they're going to have speed, they're going to have a chin, they're going to have defense, they're going to have power, all the rest of it. If you had to pick and choose, and you would say choose a couple of attributes, like genuine heavy-handed knockout power and speed are going to be up there. They're going to be two of the things that you, as a trainer, are going to be like, right, well, I can work with this guy. I can mold him. Like, I can build around those attributes. On the outside of the ring, you're a promoter or a manager. You want someone who's young, he's good looking, he's confident, he's got this massive social media following. Like, all the ingredients are there to make him into an absolute superstar. So it's unlikely that they'll, despite him calling out these big names, that they'll actually put him in with someone. Like, the problem they're going to face now is Luke Campbell is top 10 lightweight in the world. Like, even now, you'd say he's still top 10. Like, for Garcia's trajectory to continue on that up, they're going to have to look very carefully at who they're matching him with next to sort of continue that. It'd be very easy for the next name, I think, to be quite underwhelming.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
If they're not going to rush him, if they're going to sort of just push the brakes a little and guide him, they're going to have to think very carefully, because he's getting to that level now where there are fewer and fewer fighters that are going to do anything for his reputation, as well as, like, be, I don't want to say winnable fights, because any fight for him is winnable, to be honest, like with his power and his attributes. But it's getting to that sort of bottleneck stage, isn't it? He's got to get, if you're top 5 in the world, there's only definition 4 fighters that are above you. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how they sort of market him and how they develop him and push him on from here.
It is. It's fascinating. It depends how many, like, what deal he's in with DAZN, how many fights has he got, and you know what I mean. Like, is he? It could be, you know, just looking down the sort of box rec listings now. Could it be, you know, like a, I'm not going to say Ricky Burns, but like a, you know, Linares, like you said. I don't know which belt Cambosa's juniors in line for. Sort of man shot. Richard Comey's a name that sort of gets thrown about. Similar level to Campbell, probably now a 135 gatekeeper, just below them 4 or 5 names at the top. Do you know what I mean? There is fights out there for them.
Yeah, I had a look at the Ring Magazine top 10, and obviously some of those names are similar, like Cambosa's, Comey, like, again, they're decent names, and
yeah,
they're ones that maybe Garcia, you think, yeah, he'd be sort of the favourite against them, and there's just that little measuring stick, isn't there? Like, Lopez has smashed Richard Comey before, so would Garcia go in and do something similar? I think if Garcia fought Linares and didn't stop him, then maybe be some questions raised.
you've got, you know,
but these sorts of fights that they'll be able to get away with making and keep him ticking over until they're not necessarily going to cash out. That sort of implies that he's going to lose, but like they're going to value him against these other fighters. They're going to weigh it up and see whether the risk is worth it, and, you know, ultimately decide if it is or not.
Like Nakatani's just beat Verdejo there. Do you know what I mean? I think he'll probably be in line for maybe Teo Lopez next, because I think they were lining Verdejo for that one. Like, there is names there. There's good enough names where he can, without, God, it feels like I'm trying to justify him not fighting one of the big names next. But, you know, we both know how this game works. You know,
yeah, that's why I said earlier, like, it's a difference between what the fans want to see. Like, from a fan point of view, put him in with Haney, Davis, or Lopez, like, they're the fights you want to see. Lomachenko as well, to a certain extent. They're the ones that'll capture the interest and really sort of kick on and accelerate his progress. But with those fights, there is a much bigger risk than some of the names you've just mentioned that he loses. And we've seen what a loss can do. Like, I know Lomachenko's lost 2, but him losing to Lopez, and suddenly, like, fans are forgetting about him in that discussion at the top of the division, and he firmly deserves still to be in there.
You know, it's gonna be interesting going forward. Like, I'd love the Haney fight if that's the one that's made, just because 2 young Americans should be easy to do. But we'll see. I guess, being British Boxing Blog, we should probably touch on Luke Campbell and not his performance. I think we've talked about that, but sort of what next? It's a big rebuild of 33-year-old for lightweight, where he's probably, let's be honest, not going to be a world champion now. Like, what next?
It seems to me to be a bit of a recurring theme with us, in that he's coming to the end of his career and he's one of that sort of generation. I wouldn't necessarily put him in the same mold as a Khan, as a Kell Brook, but despite turning pro in 2012, you said there, he's 33. He's older than a lot of more experienced in terms of bout fighters that are sort of still going in terms of British boxing. He's probably at the point where he's thinking, right, like, what do I want from the sport? What do I want from the rest of my career? Because he's turned pro off the back of an Olympic gold medal. He's fought some of the best that there is. Now, I had this debate on Twitter with I called Babs. He was saying about whether you can consider Luke Campbell unfortunate, and it's basically depending on how you look at it. Like, is it unfortunate that he's had to fight good fighters to try and get a world title? That really should be how the sport works. That should be boxing 101. That should be the norm. But as we know, it's not. Like, there's been less deserving and less talented world champions than Luke Campbell. So I think from that point of view, he can probably sit and look at himself and say, like, I have been unlucky that I've had to fight Lomachenko, I've had to go away and fight Linares, or I've had to fight Ryan Garcia. Like, these are elite boxers that maybe other champions have managed to circumvent and navigate the way around. But it's like, it's hard to sort of say, like, what else could he have done? I mean, does he keep going at 33? Does he go back, maybe drop down, win some more sort of title eliminators, see what the situation is in 6 months' time? We've talked about how fast boxing can move. Like, Teofimo Lopez could move up to 140. He's made noise about doing that already. The belts get scattered. Campbell in a more winnable fight at home for a world title. Like, it's not the most unlikely of options, is it? Like, he could still beat a lot of them in the top 10. Like, we're talking about Linares in a rematch. Be interesting enough to see. Like, Richard Comey, Campbell could probably beat him. Like, there's still winnable fights from at a very high level, but it's how many of those is he willing to go through and not potentially get a world title from it?
Does he want another rebuild? Like, he's had one after getting beat off Linares, you know, fighting Troy James and Mendy again for the second time, like, to get that revenge there. Like, another rebuild to, I don't know if I can say it. Some people say, should he move to 140? I don't know. As people have always said, oh, he's a big lightweight. Maybe that's one last roll of the dice for him, the old move up and weight when you get beat. Or does he just accept that, hey, maybe I'm very good, but I'm not good enough to beat the big names. But, you know, if Haney wants a fight, or if any of them big guys now in the division that he hasn't already fought want a name on the record, like a reputable name, is he going to be like a big name for hire sort of thing? Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. There's definitely still options out there for him. It's obviously, again, like we said, similar with Callum Smith, didn't we? It's going to be about him sitting down and talking to those around him and ultimately making that decision for himself. Like, what does he want from the sport? What does he feel he's still got in him? And what I would say is, like, he's in a fantastic place with Shane McGuigan, who's worked with George Groves, who had sort of similar experiences. Like, I'm not saying that they're the same people at all, but having someone who's trained George Groves in a similar stage of his career after several losses, after some real extreme lows in terms of the highest level of the sport, he probably couldn't have a better trainer in Shane McGuigan, someone that's going to be able to guide him and give him that advice. And if he does decide to continue, someone who you'd back to, like, do the best job possible for him.
No, absolutely. It's going to be interesting. You know, he's been through a lot in his personal life. I know that's been well documented, like with his father and stuff. Like, 33. I don't know how well he makes the weight. I've heard no complaints about it and that, but like, big lightweight at 33. It's going to be interesting to see his next move. He might, you know, he's accomplished a hell of a lot, as I keep saying, you know, Olympic gold medalist and stuff, and could be the end of the road. I don't know. We'll have to just wait and see, but interesting to see.
Yeah, personally, from the outside looking in, I wouldn't necessarily favour him to go up to 140 and make any great waves. I don't think he's the biggest puncher. I don't think his resistance to punches, and I mean that in the sense of he's susceptible to a knockdown. They never seem to be the most devastating, apart from the one that ended things last night. But I don't see how he would fare any better against some of the names that are currently at 140. Whether Taylor and Ramirez unify and then the belts get scattered there and he gets that chance to sort of secure and get himself a world title, then yeah, I can see him doing that. But I don't think that ultimately he's going to go up there and beat the best, beat the elite either. Like, it'll depend what happens to the titles at 135 and 140. I think if their sole focus is going to be on picking up a belt. And it's interesting the way we're talking about it, that you've got a fighter who's had a very respectable career and is almost being defined by the fact that he hasn't won a world title because of his amateur career, because of his pedigree and just how highly people rated him.
Yeah.
That he could potentially beat a lesser name, pick up a vacant belt, and then suddenly that's a box ticked. Whereas, like, arguably he's done better in the fact that he's lost close fights to like Linares, and like Lomachenko and Garcia ones weren't particularly close, but like it's sort of a really bizarre way to look at the sport. You could pick up a vacant belt against an absolute no name and suddenly be considered to have had a better career.
Just the way you're talking there, you tell you who came to my mind when you were talking about it, and that's George Groves. It's sort of try again, and then he beat was Cordoba he beat at Bramall Lane, and he finally won one, and you know that was his. Yeah,
Chudanov.
I always get mixed up with them names. You know, that was his moment in this, like, and he was pretty much finished after it. Do you know what I mean? Like that was, but at least he got one. And like you say, a lot can happen. Boxing can move quickly. But if you want to be brutal about it, I guess every time he's stepped up, he's got beat. Do you know what I mean? Against the proper top names. And
that's the thing. It's whether you decide that there's shame in that or there's not. And like, I know well that you're not, and like I wouldn't either. But some people will use that as a stick to beat him with, rather than sort of praising him. And it's totally depends on your perspective, looking at the fighter and sort of picking out what you want. When we talk about Callum Smith, for example, like he's now lost one fight against Canelo, yet there'll be people, if he retires off the back of that, there'll be people saying he sort of hasn't fulfilled his potential, he didn't do as well as he could have, and all the rest of it. But there was an interesting one when we talked about Smith, and I thought of Groves, and I was meaning to mention it, and then it slipped my mind when we were actually recording. If Groves, right, had, and I think you can sort of throw Kell Brook into this one as well, the order in which their achievements have happened totally distorts your view on what they've actually done. Like, if Groves had sort of beaten Chudinov first, for a world title, a WBA or whatever it was, the vacant title at the time, I don't know if Chudinov was the champion, I really don't know. But if he'd done that and then gone on and lost to like Badu Jack and Carl Froch and that, you'd be like, well, yeah, he was good, he was a world champion, but he stepped up and he lost. But because he won that title at that time, having the hard luck story, and you just mentioned try again, and it was so romanticized, and everyone was willing him to do it. And, you know, he's been unlucky that he's fought Froch twice, and the Badu Jack fight was close. He swapped trainers again. He's gone with Shane McGuigan, and he's worked his way back, and he's finally done it. And then went on the Super Series and lost. It was just sort of like, right, like, you know, story completely. He's done everything. Whereas like Kell Brook went away, won his title against Sean Porter, and then he's lost 3 fights since. He's sort of viewed as having this career where it's like, well, it's unfulfilled. It wasn't quite what it was meant to be, or it wasn't quite as good as it should have been. But imagine Brook had fought, like, totally hypothetical this, but if he'd fought Spence first, or like Golovkin and then Spence, and then Porter, and then then Crawford, and then like after all of those losses, he'd beat Porter in that close decision, and he rides off into the sunset having accomplished his goal of being a world champion. But because of the manner in which they've happened and the order they've happened, the sort of timelines, it's totally different how you see those two careers.
No, it's a good point, but I guess I think it's the fact Kell Brook wasted his prime, basically. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, massively, yeah.
But like Groves, I said there he won the title and was finished, and I think it's not true. Like he still beat, he still beat Chris Eubank, and like I sort of got my order mixed up as where like Chudinov to Smith. Do you know what I mean? And like, but he is proof that he can do it. Do you know what I mean? Froch, you got to score a decent bit down his record to get the Froch. Do you know what I mean? Like, he came back with Brasse, Dublin, went to States, got beat off by Jack, and then rebuilt again and beat Murray and bloody Chudinov. You know what I mean? Jamie Cox, Eubank. So he can't do it. It's just the age thing, I think, with Campbell for me. And I don't know, like, you don't want to sit and write him off because there still is avenues open to him, but I don't know. I'm not sure how he can. Well, it all depends on the belts, like you say. Like, maybe he's even fighting Richard Comey for like a vacant title or a name similar to that. Then maybe that's his chance. Whether he's going to beat a Lopez or a Tank Davis or a Devin Haney at this point, I'm not too sure. You know what I mean? He's having already lost to who he's lost against. Not a massive. I don't want to say not a massive name, but the whole thing never worked really, apart from Battle of the Humber, whatever it was called, against Tommy Coyle. Like, when you've got no fans and no boxing in this country, he's going to sit and wait around to have one big night at Hull when he's already had that. Like, so it's tricky. Like, you know what I mean?
I think it's basically whether he wants to go back in the gym, dedicate his life to the sport, like stay dedicated to boxing, on the off chance or the chance that a vacant world title comes up. That's how I sort of see it from now. He might be totally different. They might go in, be not sort of focused on that, not thinking about that. Like, they might have other goals, who knows? But unfortunately, it's the latest in what seemingly a long line of British fighters that are going over to America and ultimately coming up short.
I think he's obviously got money in the bank, and I think Olympic gold medalists are never really out of work media-wise. He would pick somebody up instantly. He talks well. He comes across well. He's got a story behind him. He's polite, well-mannered, clean-cut, no scandals about Luke Campbell. Do you know what I mean? So there's definitely work out there for him as well, I think. So I don't know. My gut instinct is that I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll not say that because it's not up to me to write Luke Campbell off. But I just think not that many options, sadly.
Yeah. So moving on to the sort of theme of the plucky Brit, the underdog, the brave British challenger going over, crossing the Atlantic and testing themselves against the best that America has to offer. Got a lovely little quiz game lined up for you.
I knew this was coming. I've done no.
I know. I bet you've done no revision either, have you?
No. It was pretty me that started the discussion the other day. I messaged you saying, I planted the seed. Now I'm being quizzed.
I've sat right today, gone through Box Rec, and basically gone through my little memory vault of who British and Irish boxers who've gone over to America and Canada and sort of basically compiled their records in America and Canada. So starting off with Luke Campbell, for example, he went over to America and he boxed on the Kell Brook Sean Porter undercard.
Did he?
And he did, and he blasted someone out in a round or two. I don't even know who it was. He's since then lost to, obviously, Ryan Garcia this weekend and Linares in America. So his record in the States is 1 win, 2 losses, right? So next name on the list, you need to tell me if they've got more or less than 2 losses in America and Canada on their record.
Right, come on then.
Callum Johnson is your first name up.
He got beat, didn't he? He got sparked out. Well, not sparked out, but he was in a good fight with Peterbiev while it lasted. No, not good. I don't think, has he ever won in America?
He won after Peterbiev. He fought Shawnee Monahan on a Matchroom USA card. He is 1-1 in America.
Wow.
Next one up, Carl Froch.
Andrew Ward, but then beat. Came back over here for quite a lot. Is he 1-1? 2-1?
2-1. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Beat Jermaine Taylor.
Jermaine Taylor, yeah, that's obviously
before the Super 6.
Unreal.
And then he beat Glenn Johnson in America as well.
Right, yeah.
And obviously lost to Andre Ward in the final as he's 3 bouts in America.
Yeah, so we do send them over more than you think. Do you know what I mean? It's interesting.
There's some interesting ones in here. Honestly, there's a list of over 40 or whatever I'm going to publish as an article, but I'll just pick some more at random. What I will say is to anyone listening, don't jump in and correct me because I've gone through BoxRec manually and checked these, so there's probably some glaring omissions and glaring errors. The next one you should definitely get based on how many this fella lost in his whole career. Joe Calzaghe.
Yeah. The man, yeah. That's good.
Know how many wins he got in America?
Oh, Calzaghe. Canny few. Possibly a canny because he went. It took him a while to come over here, didn't it?
It did. Bear that in mind. It took him a while to go over. Once he'd fought in America, he didn't fight anywhere else.
6.
2.
Brilliant.
I was trying to tempt you down. You only fought Hopkins and Roy Jones Jr. in America. All these others were over here.
That's mad, that, isn't it?
It's crazy when you look at how good he was. You can see why the Americans don't necessarily rate him as highly as obviously we do over here. It comes back down to it, doesn't it? We sort of really build up our fighters, and then what they see of them isn't anywhere near as good as what we see, really.
I was touching on this with you last night. You just, how do I word it without sounding disrespectful? But there seems to be our little island sort of syndrome that if you look down, I wish I'd recorded them all, but just a random sort of old fighters, ex-fighters who'd fought like a decent level. Everyone's prediction: Campbell points. No, it's Campbell. GB Olympic class. You know what I mean? Like, and you forget sometimes that like there's a whole new world out there, and a whole different world out there of like pretty good fighters, and and then it's almost if he does get beat, like sort of like Callum Smith, then it's like there has to be like a reason, and I don't know, like it's drugs, it's this, it's that, and I don't know, it's like as if we can't sort of accept that you're still allowed to get beat, even if you're an Olympic gold medalist and you fought for GB and all this, and you've had all the whole amateur background and you tick every box. There's still, the States is still the place to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really is, and that's where the top draw fighters still come from.
It comes back down to the sort of bias, doesn't it, and the over familiarity, because they've like the top names in British boxing, by and large, have come up through Team England, Team GB, and you obviously know each other. Like, you see them posting occasionally on Twitter or social media, whatever it may be, like the pictures of them all as a squad when they've grown up together, and not necessarily all in each other's pocket and best mates, but they've known each other for years. So, like, of course they're going to want each other to do well, and like on the whole anyway, unless there's like like DeGale Groves type rivalries and stuff. But generally speaking, say, oh yeah, remember that like trip 10 years ago or whatever.
That's it. You do get a lot of that.
They've got this sort of there's a bond there. That's the best way to put it. There's a real fraternity between them, and it's understandable. But then when you're in the public eye, and we've highlighted this loads with the punditry, like there's a bit more expected of you from fans. We want your expert knowledge, your expertise, your insight into the sport, rather than just like, oh well, he's my mate, so he's going to win. I think it was like the first Mendy fight with Campbell when they went to Bellew in the crowd, and he basically said like he didn't think he was winning, but he hoped that the judges scored it for Campbell, like because he wanted him to get the win. And I can totally sympathise with that. I can see why. Like, we've been in that situation with sort of boxing personalities and people we've met. Like, you wish them well and you want to see them do well, but if you're then allowing that to cloud your judgment, and you're allowing like personal feelings and emotions to come into it, are you best placed to be a pundit and to be getting paid to comment on the sport? And speaking of the main man, Tony Bellew, how's his record in North America?
Right. Well, North America, good. Yes, nice. Stevenson comes to mind, obviously. It's so funny when you think of these fighters, because you just think David Haye, Goodison Park. You know what I mean? I'm going to go.
That's your lot. He's fought Stevenson. That's the only fight over there.
Yeah.
So he's one of a few, actually. I was going to quiz you on like loads, but I'll just mention a few of these. Who
Ryan Rose.
Have the unfortunate honour of going 0-1. Basically, they've had one fight over there and they've lost.
Ryan Rose, Gavin Rees.
Hold on, go on. Yeah, there's two.
John O'Carroll.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking this is sort of why I wanted to just because
there were honestly, mate, there were loads.
I just think of these plucky sort of British that we send them over to get slaughtered, especially like when Matchroom USA and DAZN seem to start. Tennyson got beat over there, aye.
Yep. Tennyson and Carroll both to Tevin Farmer.
It must be how the Italians view the Matchroom Italy shows when we send Brits over there to win against beleaguered Italians.
Well, this is it. And then if you're an American viewer and you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, here's the latest Brit World Challenger, and they're getting fed the same shite in the build-ups of, I'm coming to shock the world, I'm coming over, I'm not just here to take part, and this like essentially false bravado, and then they're seeing these fighters fall short. Like, it's no wonder that they're going to look down on us as sort of as rivals, if you want to call it that.
What's Ricky Hatton's record over there? Obviously, Pacquiao, Mayweather.
Ricky Hatton's actually 4-2, 4 wins and the 2 losses.
4 wins. Wow, he fought over there that many times. Mad.
He took himself off. He was similar. There's Amir Khan Khan's even fought more, but I've got Khan down here as winning 7 and losing 4 in America.
Like,
they were the two, weren't they, that really sort of just took themselves off to America, and obviously Khan did it a lot earlier on in his career as well.
Then you've got like Liam Smith, Rocky Fielding. Do you know what I mean? They must.
I put a little asterisk next to Fielding because I was initially compiling my list of people who only fought for world titles, but He's 0-1, losing to Canelo the only time he was over there. Liam Smith won one on an undercard somewhere, and then lost to Canelo and Munguia.
Josh
Callum Smith 1-1, obviously losing to Canelo, and he beat Hassan and Dam. Stephen Smith's record, we'll go through the family.
Lost.
Had 2 fights in America.
What was the one where his eye totally went? Oh, I don't remember now. Tell me.
He's had 2 and he's lost 2.
Oh, there you go.
Pedraza was one of them.
Paul Smith, Andrew Ward.
Paul Smith's another in the 0-1 club. I lost to Andre Ward.
It's just interesting, isn't it? Does it
there's another one, you might have heard of him. Anthony Joshua. 0-1.
0-1, Ruiz.
0-4 Ruiz. Then a couple of the others in similar and interesting. I've put these all in a row actually. Luke Keeler was there.
Shit, Luke Keeler.
Lee Purdy.
God, Devin Alexander.
He fought Devin Alexander on short notice when Brooke pulled out one of them. Michael Jennings.
Tell us. Go
on. Miguel Cotto lost. And Gary Lockett.
Wow.
Went over and fought Kelly Pavlik, and they're like, again, this isn't a comprehensive list by any means. Like, there's others on there. Gavin McDonnell, another one fight over there, lost. Anthony Croller fought Lomachenko in the States.
Yeah,
like it's not a myth that the fighters go over there. I mean, there are some with winning records, and there was actually more than I thought. But there's a big asterisk next to them in that most of them are ones who've compiled. Like, they've picked up wins on undercards. The wins haven't been in the world title fights.
What about Lennox Lewis? What was his record over there?
I didn't go that far back, if I'm honest. Hatton and Calzaghe were the sort of ones I thought, right, they're like 2008, whatever, and Hatton was even a little bit before that, and I just thought, I was like, I haven't got time to go any further back.
I think you go back to Nazim and all that, and even before that, but...
Yeah, exactly. I think, like, the reason I sort of left those out, and you can call it like confirmation bias, I've just picked the ones that sort of fit my pattern. But like, they're ones who, like, that's how far you've got to go back to see these British fighters who've gone over there as absolute stars and as like big favourites. I mean, Tyson Fury's the one at the moment. He's 5 wins, no defeats, and the 1 draw against Wilder. Like, he's the one who's gone over there, and even some of those, like, we'll talk about the Tom Schwartz fights and Otto Wallen and that. Like, they were all fights that he was expected to win, but obviously the Wilder ones have sort of put him in that mix. And you think, right, actually, he's gone over as a star. Yeah. He's gone over there to make his name rather than going over there to cash out because it's a decent paycheck.
Just goes to show that, like, breaking America is pretty fucking difficult, isn't it? Like, do you know what I mean?
Like, the Matchroom USA that you talked about earlier, like, that platform should be where, like, the following that Amir Khan pattern or the following the Ricky Hatton pattern of, like, right, well, we've sort of done it in the UK, we've done it in Britain, now we're going off to crack America, is that phrase, but it doesn't seem to be like a really successful model, and it would be interesting to dig down a bit and see why not, like, where that's lacking. Is it the boxers from a technical point of view? Like, are we lacking this Team GB model? Is it good to a certain level? Is it good to a certain degree? And then are we falling short? Is there somewhere where we're slipping up compared to this? Again, it's not just to Americans, is it? Because there's like Mexicans, there's obviously lads that fought Golovkin and the like, and Cotto and all these different nationalities. But is there something or somewhere that we are lacking? Is it the promotion? Are we not building them to that point? Because like Carl Froch, for example, he was massive on fighting in Vegas at the end of his career. He was determined to do it, wasn't he? And it never materialised for him, unfortunately.
It's a probably whole different podcast, which we'll probably got the time to do, to discuss like the merits of it. Does it make us look foolish in the eyes of, worldwide boxing fans, US boxing fans, or then the other side of it is that, like, what you meant to say to people like Luke Keeler and Brian Rose, are you just like sort of potentially life-changing sums of money in that one roll of the dice?
This is the argument, isn't it, from the promoter? We've heard this like exact phrase from Eddie Hearn, like life-changing money. Like, what are these lads supposed to do? Turn down the opportunity to fight for a world title?
You might say like, what you feeling? Nah, don't bother, mate. Don't bother fighting Canelo. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's so tricky. Like it is, it's really tricky. Like,
does that come down to the British mentality? Like as we say, as you said right at the start, like our mates have talked about this in terms of like a loser mentality almost. Like we're happy to sort of be valiant in defeat rather than like there'll be all these lads, and I'm not saying like the ones who've gone over and lost, like it's not me slagging them off in any way. It's just saying these lads have, by and large, Joshua is an exception, have gone over there as very heavy underdogs, and seemingly when you pick it apart, has there been any sort of specific preparation for them getting to that world title? Some of them will have been mandatory challenges, so they've gone the route.
Yeah, exactly.
They've done everything asked of them to get that world title shot, but in terms of the prep and working towards it, like have they been ready for that title shot when it's come?
It's the double-edged sword, isn't it? There's two sides to the argument. That like, I don't know. It's quite a tricky one, but it's something that came to my head the other day that I just was thinking about it, like thinking about Smith, and then back from that, and I think obviously with the launch of Matchroom USA and the whole DAZN thing, we'd sent a few over there to like get beat, and I think that's where the sort of ludicrous statements from people like Johnny Nelson come, saying like Tennyson's ready for like Tank Davis and that, and it's like no wonder people do something as laugh at British boxing and stuff, because that was just like, it doesn't help. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't help us be taken seriously in the eyes of like US fight fans or pundits or whatever, but then again, it'd be interesting to see how many came over here and what that sort of record is. And
I honestly, I thought of that as I was sort of compiling this. I thought, well, actually,
not many come over anymore, though.
There's not many, because again, like, is the money there necessarily? Like, are they coming over and getting life-changing sums? But also, you think of like, well, actually, like, how many sort of fringe-level American contenders have come over and just been the opponent? I know, like, when Liam Smith won his world title, it was, I can't remember the name of the lad, but there was some American came over and he got absolutely pasted, and it was like he was nowhere near world level yet. He basically done the same as what we discussing here. He's come over to fight for a vacant title or to fight a world champion for the belt, and like fell way short.
It's proper funny now when you think back, when you look at the ones that do. Like, it's mental to think that like Gervonta Davis came over here to fight Liam Walsh at the Cotter Box. And I would have loved to have seen or find what the odds line on that was. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the same man. Kovalev came over to fight Cleverly, and I bet you open a bloody underdog, or you get good odds on those people.
They wouldn't be far from evens, like, to be honest. Like,
I'd love to know. Like, I wish I was aware at the time. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny because we talked about Calzaghe earlier. Like, whenever an American or an unbeaten brash American comes over and the hype is the next thing, you can guarantee Calzaghe Lacey gets thrown out. Oh, this is where the Brit's going to step up. He's going to show the American what's what. He's going to, like, it gets recycled every single time. And it's like, yeah, but how likely is that? It's like, Deontay Wilder came over, didn't he? And did he beat, was it Audley Harrison he chinned in around?
It's mad that. Terence Crawford, Ricky Burns, 2014. Like, I remember watching that and just like, basically beat Burns pillar to post, and like, just mad.
But like someone like a Terence Crawford, obviously now you know what he's gone on to achieve and just how good he is and all the rest of it. But on the other side of that, like Ryan Martin came over and fought Josh Taylor, and you're like, he's just unbeaten American. Like, I haven't seen anything of him. He could be absolutely legit. He could be elite. He could be the next pound for pound great. And he got absolutely smashed all over. It's obviously boxing as a sport is an individual game, isn't it? It's an individual sport. It's down to that. Like, you can have the amateur program, but unless they're sticking with those trainers or those methods throughout their pro career, they get dispersed very, very quickly. Like, they go to the different pro trainers, so their whole outlook on the sport's going to change, and it makes it hard to really criticize Team GB because they've done all they can and produced fantastic amateur talents. Do you then look at the boxers themselves? Do you look at the pro trainers? Like, who's doing the pro training in this country and what exactly they're offering? Like, how are they bringing boxers on and progressing them to world level? And again, even that, like, there's thousands, probably different trainers up and down the country. And
or do you look solely at like land mass and population and the size of America to our little island and think, well, of course they're going to get better boxers because there's more people. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a perfectly valid point, isn't it?
But anyway, I suppose went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I quite enjoyed that. We'll finish on DAZN. I think there's a lot of things to talk about their coverage last night. I think up until last night, it was so far so good. It was riding a bit of a wave, novelty factor, $1.99 a month, and the UK friendly start times. Last night maybe didn't go according to plan from their coverage wise. My take on it was that it was 100 mile an hour throughout. It was very, very American. And when I say American, I sort of think back to like WWE as a kid and like just a lot going on. I didn't know if Kate Abdo's sort of anchoring the show, presenting it, or was it the commentators? Then we were going down to ringside. Then I thought cutting back to Gareth A. Davis and Ricky Hatton was pretty unnecessary as well. Then because of the lag, the delay, waiting for them to speak halfway through a round, you're losing valuable seconds there. They had to be cut off, I think, more than once. The presenters were like fist bumping each other, and there was one point they went, fire and ice, like that. And I was like, what are you doing? What's going on? And it's just it's not what we're used to, I guess. And we both watch wrestling as a kid and stuff, and it reminded me of that last night. There was a lot going on there.
Again, someone had mentioned that like WWE, and I thought, right, I'm going to try and I read that today, and I was like, right, when I watch it in future, I'm just going to imagine it as that, like where you've got your like JR again over the top, proper hype man for everything that's going on, like selling the action, which is essentially what they're doing. We get that over here as well, like the sort of we've had with the commentators, like overhyping it and stuff, but this just seemed to take it to a whole new level. And then you've got Jerry the King Lawler as like your sort of heel commentator who's just deliberately picking one fighter and like transparently praising everything one fighter does. And if you go into it with that sort of view and that sort of outlook on it, then it's probably not actually not bad. It's just like, yeah, that's what they're doing. Like Ryan Garcia, like I was sitting watching it with the commentary on, but very quietly. And I was trying to, like, admittedly watching it from a Luke Campbell point of view, trying to see what he was doing and what his game plan was. But it was really pissing me off that Garcia would land shots clearly like on the gloves, and Campbell would land a shot to the body, and now it was said, and it's there's a flow from Garcia. Garcia's forcing him back, and it's like, well, yeah, he's forcing him back, but not with any actual scoring punches. It's just that like presence of the fact he's big and strong, and it's nothing new in that sense. Like we always whinge about Sky and BT and favouring the home fighter and stuff, but I agree with you in the whole setup of it. Like I only turned on towards the end of the chief support, and Gareth A. Davis was on, and I was like, why are they talking to him about like middle of the round? Like why have we gone to him?
Yeah.
And the bloke got dropped, so the commentators started like screaming over the top of it. And then Gareth A. Davis, 5 seconds later, was like, oh, and he's down. And it was just like, they're like, guys, we'll have to cut you off. And he was still rabbiting away. And it just didn't work. Like, it was...
Obviously, he was in the UK, Gareth, and Ricky Hatton, I think. So that lag and that delay was just pointless. Like, no offense to Alvarado and Gutierrez, but no one needs to go to Gareth A. Davis and Ricky Hatton to talk what they're thinking of Alvarado and Gutierrez through around. Like, do you know what I mean? It was just... I don't know. They're trying to cram a lot in, and obviously trying to appease and appeal to British viewers. Oh, we'll get Ricky Hatton on, we'll get Gareth A. Davis on. Well, respect.
Which is cool, and that's fine. Yeah. But then it's almost like there was just too much of it because, as you say, you've got like Kate Abdo in the studio speaking to various people. There's like 2 or 3 of them at any one time commentating. You've then got another 2 in the studio in London on a delay. Like. There's not that need for that much. Like they don't need to fill that dead air time like, constantly. And again, it's going to be personal preference, and obviously they are new to it in a certain extent. They might tone it down. They might find a formula that works for them. But this is the first time I think the DAZN coverage has divided opinion since the UK launch, and it hasn't been that long. Obviously, it was a matter of time to a certain degree. But there's a few elements of it that people were a bit rolling their eyes, and I tweeted out there's like an option on DAZN if you want to cancel. One of the reasons is like not happy with our sports commentary team.
Yeah.
And it was that's probably one of them. Bearing in mind we're sort of promoting and pushing the DAZN and asking people to sign up for it. Like it was unbelievable the amount of people who like replied saying, "Yeah, like I'm cancelling." Like whether I was for that or not, but like they were so annoyed by it that they were like, "I can't be done with it." And like obviously there's the whole muting. Some people said they'd put the Spanish coverage on instead, like switch to Spanish.
Yeah.
And it was just like I was like a bit like I totally did it tongue in cheek. Like obviously know how what people's sentiments were, but like the amount of people that were seriously like, no, like, I'm fed up. Like it's ridiculous.
I was on a few streaming issues last night. I don't know if that was in my end or the DAZN's end. I don't know if that was like it did improve when I think I had to like connect my telly to the Wi-Fi or something as well. But I don't know. It still even during the main event it did cut out a couple of times. So
see, mine was all right actually. The previous week when I watched Golovkin on a replay, that the quality wasn't HD all the time. It was sort of like not blurry, but like standard definition or whatever.
Yeah,
it like flickered back in. And then I think once during the Callum Smith fight, it was like in between rounds, it sort of buffered. It froze like literally a second. I didn't really notice it, but then last night was absolutely fine for me. So I think it's going to be teething issues in it. The more people they get, the more server space and hosting and all the rest of it they're going to need. It's unfortunately it's going to be a really unforgiving environment for them, because when people are paying, they expect a certain level of service and a certain level of quality.
To balance it out, like, you know, I'm well on board with the $1.99 a month. I've got no issues with that. Do you know what I mean? They've got Kovalev at the end of the month. They've had Campbell. We've had Canelo, Smith, Golovkin. I think the value's there. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of shows on there that haven't really delved into the sort of build-up shows, and they do weekly boxing shows as well on there. Haven't really delved into that. You know, selfishly, as a UK fight fan, I'm well on board with 11 p.m. ring walks from Texas, our time. Like, you know, if that's just a sort of induction thing to the British market, I don't know, but I did read that they were going to try and start like keep these ring walk times going and stuff. So well on board with that, you know, get me at that time instead of 5 o'clock in the morning any day of the week. So there is positives there, and you know, $1.99, I'm not tight. You know, I'm not. People will probably listen and go, "Oh, you're whinging when it's only $1.99 a month," but there's stuff to work on.
No, I think that's a good point though. The $1.99, it was, I think, fairly easy for us to tempt people into it and to sort of like sign up via our affiliate link, saying, "Well, if you're going to do it via DAZN, do it through us, give us a hand," type thing. But because it's only $1.99, that's a massive selling point for a lot of people when you look at the price of a pay-per-view over here. I think when they inevitably move the price up, an area they're potentially going to struggle in is the regularity of the content. Like we've just obviously said over here, boxing's been basically cancelled for a month. Like if that happens stateside as well, even at the best of times, boxing isn't the most regular sport. Like we've figured that out and found that out trying to do round for pound and pick 6 or 7 fights every weekend, and sometimes we've had to stretch it out over a couple of weekends because there hasn't been that many cards on. And if you're then paying a tenner a month for something and there's one show on every month, it's suddenly the value in your perception of it really changes and it's really altered. Like £2 when we've had Golovkin, we've had Smith, Canelo, we've had Campbell, Garcia in the space of a month or whatever. Brilliant. Like pound for pound, that's great value. That's really good value for a boxing thing. And there's the cards on there that you've talked about. And it'll be interesting to see just how much people do delve into the sort of back catalogue of the documentaries and what have you, and whether the DAZN push more like not necessarily time relevant content. It's like I'm not going to sit now and go through all the Campbell Garcia press and head-to-head and interviews and backstage stuff, and like, you know, it was on HBO, the 24/7 type shows and all the rest of it, because it's done. Like we talked right at the start of this pod about how quick the goalposts move in boxing and how it changes from one fight to the next. As soon as that fight's done, we've experienced it again with our podcast. Like if we don't get a preview out several days before, people aren't interested. Like people don't. That window of opportunity is not massive, so it's going to be really interesting to see what other sports they get on there. Like I know they do have other sports across the air and across the different countries and the different zones that they're in. But it'll be interesting to see just what the quality there, as well, like the quantity as well, just how much stuff they've got on there.
I think at the minute, I'm just on the website now, they've got Kovalev end of the month. You know, that'll be a good fight, and fight that you could be well up against it in. You've got Jojo Diaz in February, middle of Feb, and then you've got Estrada of Chocolatito 2 in March. That's it for now, but I'm sure more stuff will come. You know, and they, as I say, they do these weekly shows. I've seen the adverts for them last night. I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, different type of shows, but without regular action, how relevant those shows are, I don't know. But, you know,
it just depends on it, doesn't it? It depends entirely on what content they have. Like, that's how it's going to get judged first and foremost. Like, I said that after I tweeted about the commentary, and I said basically, like, for $1.99 a month, as long as the content's there, like, I'm happy. I'm not going to be bothered by that. And like Martin Campbell from New Age Boxing had tweeted about the lull in the action and stuff, and they might not have anything for a month or a couple of weeks. At $1.99, people aren't going to be necessarily bothered, but if they knock that up to a tenner or whatever, then you're going to have more people dropping in and out, because you're not just going to sit there for paying £10 for a couple of months. If there's only one show on or whatever, you'll cancel it, watch that show, pick it up before the next one.
I think it's fair to say that they've probably moved from so far so good to, we'll call it teething problems at this point. A work in progress.
And in their defence, I did speak to Chris Mannix earlier about the commentary, and he was
popping up on my phone.
He was fairly respectful. It was actually Jamel Heron had said, like, tweeted last night saying we're going into the 5th round, but is anyone noticing Campbell investing a lot to the body? And Christina Poncha, who I believe is another announcer, had said, like, check the last tweet. And then Chris Mannix had replied to that saying, Sergio in the 1st, Ricky Hatton in the 3rd, Sergio extensively in the 5th. I'm all for fair critiques, but this was noted repeatedly. And to me, that was almost like a sort of scattergun approach of, well, we had that many people talking about the boxing that, yes, we did mention it. And it's like, yeah, because everything got mentioned because everyone was just chucking darts at the action, is like picking up on everyone saying one thing's happened. And I said, as I'd mentioned earlier, that like Sergio Mora had said, with 10 seconds to go in the 1st round, he said Campbell lands his first body shot. I was like, there was 3 or 4 others that he just totally ignored. So fair play, like Chris came back and he said, I can't speak for him, but felt the one he called was the most impactful, and it was the 1st round. My greater point being that like Luke Campbell's bodywork was not ignored. And I went in a bit back and forth, and I said, like, see, it wasn't ignored completely. They did acknowledge certain things that he was doing, but it was totally skewed in the way, like, the amount of stuff that they said Garcia was doing compared to almost going silent when Campbell landed something, or spending the time. And this is a little irk I've had with British commentary as well. Like, there's 3 minutes in a round. There's not enough time to actually call what's going on and fill us in of the whole like backstory of the boxer, or repeatedly tell us that Garcia's pretty, but he's got killer instincts that makes him like De La Hoya and Sugar Ray Leonard. Like, every single round there was this mention of how good looking Garcia was. It's like, fuck's sake, man, we'll get it. Like,
yeah, I think because we know it happens over here, we're a bit sick of it with Sky, where, you know, always talking about the whole fighter, not acknowledging the way fighters work. And then I thought Adam Smith can talk his way through a 3-minute round, and they can talk even more than Adam Smith. And we were probably hoping that DAZN was going to be like this refreshing change of sports punditry and commentary, and it's actually very similar to what we've got over here. You know, the backstories, the 100-mile-an-hour talking, the acknowledging their fighters. You know what I mean?
It's an extension of the promotion, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Which is what you get when you have promoters and networks signed to exclusive deals. They're sort of incentivized to plug the action.
I'm sure the shows will come. You know, it's pretty 3rd of Jan. You know, so there is stuff in the diary, and I'm sure more will get added. So we'll just have to see. And British boxing's on its arse a bit at the minute now. But we're interested to see how they go forward and continue. But, you know, in the space of 2 weeks, Canelo, Smith, Golovkin, and then Garcia, Campbell, hasn't been a bad launch for DAZN. And massively grateful for anyone that's used our referral link as well, because we've had a few people using that. So interesting to watch this space and see how they try and like rectify things from here and go forward. And, you know, when Kovalev comes around at the end of Jan, if anything is different at all, or if it's still proper mad. But I think other than that, we've got a blank few weeks now, but we're still trying to get stuff done. even though it's just me and you, looking ahead.
So I say we'll wrap that one up, and then hopefully we'll get some guests. We've got a couple lined up for something midweek this week. Hopefully we'll have a couple over the next few as well. I need to drop that one by, but we've got an interesting one, but something a bit different, but a really, really interesting one. One I'm very keen on getting out there.
April Hunter's just messaged me as well saying he's still up for this podcast, so I'm gonna have to reply yes to that as well.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll get that sorted this week, but onwards and upwards, and hopefully it's not too long till we see some more British action.
Nice one. Cheers, dude.
Cheers, lads. See you later, mate. Bye bye.